However, this presentation isn't going to be a developer type thing. I'm going to be walking through some live examples of ScribeSEO and InboundWriter. These are two great plugins that I use for every article that I write these days, and they've helped me significantly write better articles, get better results from those articles, and from an SEO perspective, I serve up articles into Google. When Google picks up my articles, it's easier for Google to understand what my article is about, and they place that better. And as people are doing Google searches, they find what they're looking for a little bit better if they happen across one of my articles, because what I wrote it about, the intent of that article, matches what their intent is in search. And so I'm not pulling in people on weird tangents as they're finding my articles. As an example, years and years back, before I knew what I was doing quite as much, I embedded an image on one of my blog articles, and I didn't know it at the time, but the image had a reference in the file name of the image to Dolly Parton and a couple of her popular, famous assets. And for years I was getting search results into my site on Dolly Parton's breasts. And I'd never written about them. They weren't covered anywhere, but it was just this weird tangent that I ranked really well for on Google. And the people that came, they didn't find what they were looking for. It just wasn't the right thing. So it's in a weird way, I think, oh, nice to have traffic, but that's not the traffic I'm looking for. They're not happy with me. They're not going to subscribe, and it's just not a match. And so I started using a couple tools a couple years back. And as a caveat, these are considered premium plugins or services that have a premium with them typically, but I found that they're well worth the money. And I'll come back to this at the very end of it, but I wanted to point that out first because I'm basically going to show you how you can use them. And from my perspective, when I first saw them, it kind of helped me understand why the service is kind of worth the money a little bit. So, sure.
When you write a good post that's Google likes, what does it usually take to really show up in the rankings?
Well, it's changing. It's changing a whole lot now. These days, I can show up a lot faster than I used to. Years back, I might write a good article, and it might take me 2 or 3 months to move my way up the rankings. And I think there's a couple different things going on. One, the sites that I'm writing on, they're at a site level, they're doing a little bit better than they were back then. But also, Google is rapidly pushing things in certain directions when it finds a good match. And so I think it's partly the change in algorithm. Google Plus is doing all sorts of crazy things these days with rankings. And so there's a lot of different things that are going on there. But as I write more these days, I tend to write articles that are about very specific things. I don't write a lot of general fluffy type of articles. I don't write a whole lot of stuff these days either about, Happy Valentine's Day to, whoever's reading on my site or anything like that. It's, I'm covering something. I'm typically covering it in depth. And odds are, if you come and read one of the articles, you're going to, it's going to be a long article to read. You're going to be in for the long haul, and hopefully one day I'll create a short video for it so you don't have to read anything. But we'll kind of walk through that in just a second. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take an article that I wrote last night. It's a little short by my standards, only about 2,200 words. And I'm going to push it through these plugins and show you some of the evolution. Now, one of the things about giving a presentation, I can write and compose and type and talk at the same time, but the writing's going to really be terrible. And as you listen to me, it's not going to be the best presentation you've ever been to. So I've actually written this ahead of time, and I'm going to paste in a couple iterations of what I wrote through a couple different improvement stages in the document so that you can see kind of how this works. So here I've got a website. This is actually one of my main websites, and I've got 2 plugins installed. Now, this is real simple plugin installation. I'm not going to cover how to install a plugin or any of that type of stuff. I've got the plugins running, and there's 2 of them. One of them is called InboundWriter, and just in the general order of things within WordPress, it shows up first when I'm on a post page. I'm going to assume just a little bit that everybody's seen a WordPress post page before, or has written a post, or at least after 2 days of WordCamp, you've probably seen people talk about it or mention it. And on the right, we have InboundWriter as one of the widgets that shows up in my editing area. And below that, I've got another section of widgets for Scribe, which is ScribeSEO. It's a second service. So I've got widgets here as well. And what kind of happens with these is, with InboundWriter, this is the more interactive side of things. It's a very new plugin, very new service, and basically what happens is you start writing a little bit of text, and InboundWriter starts to pay attention to what you're writing, and as you get to about the 200-word stage, it kind of knows what you're writing about, and it starts to grade and assess what you're doing, and it starts to help you figure out what direction you want to go, what audience you might want to talk to, and a few other things. Scribe is a little bit different in that it waits until you've written something, and then you can push a button and it will analyze everything that you've written. It will analyze your title. It will analyze your SEO fields. Now, I use all-in-one SEO on some sites. I use Genesis built-in SEO things on other sites and a couple other plugins depending on where I'm at. But Scribe works with a number of different SEO tools and themes. So it just kind of, they've got a whole list of what they work with and how it kind of goes. But they'll actually analyze what you put in your SEO title and in your SEO description and match that up with what you wrote in your body content and in the actual title of your blog article too, and take a look at the big picture of how they think that's going to perform from an SEO perspective. So,
Brett,
yes?
you typically write in the, compose in the edit post section, or do you compose offline in that?
I work in a couple different areas, actually. I'd say about half the time I work in the WordPress section for writing a post. Half the time I also start a lot of things off in Windows Live Writer, which is a tool that wasn't originally built by Microsoft. They bought a service that built this awesome tool. It's a desktop application for writing blog articles. I still love that today. I've been using it for years. It's at this point, it's very comparable to what you can do in WordPress, with the exception that I think that Windows Live Writer does a better job of allowing you to manipulate images. And so if I've got a lot of images that are going into a post, I'll start in Windows Live Writer for sure. But it kind of depends on where I'm working. If I'm offline, then obviously I can't work in WordPress, so then I'll go there. And things are changing these days too, because I'm starting to write more posts in my iPad as well. So, and I've got the app for that. So I'm kind of all over the place at this point in time.
How do these things get impacted by that? I mean, if you're
Sure.
in.
Well, in this case, these tools don't work until you're into WordPress. And they don't have an add-on for Windows Live Writer. Neither of them do. And they also don't work with the WordPress app yet. But as soon as you publish a draft in here, you can start to analyze what's going on. So, yep.
So when you use this Windows Live Writer, are you saying as far as manipulate images, like where you want to place it in the text, things like that? Or
Things like that, what size, and
that, right? So then, how do you move that into your WordPress?
it connects. So with Windows Live Writer, and years back I gave a presentation on this at the Birmingham WordCamp. But basically what happens is you set up Windows Live Writer and you add in all the different blogs. At the time I was writing for 40 or 50 different blogs. And it keeps track of all those accounts. And so you can just pick whichever site you're going to publish to or write to, and then start writing. You hit a publish button and it zaps it right up. You don't have to log in or anything like that. If you're working on a lot of sites, definitely handy for that type of purpose. There's a lot of good things about it. It's getting a little old in the tooth, and it's a free program too. You have to get it with Windows Live, and they try to dump all the other Windows Live stuff, which is mostly garbage, on you. But Windows Live Writer is worth the free, dodge around all the garbage that they send.
I mean, maybe you don't know.
Sure.
But Mars Edit, is it kind of like, you familiar with that?
A little bit. I think it's somewhat similar. There also used to be a tool called ScribeFire, and I'm not sure if that's still out there. That's different than ScribeSEO. It's more of a browser-based type of system. I used to like actually, I started using Windows Live Fire when ScribeFire went down for 3 weeks years and years ago.
Oh, did you say Live Writer or Live Fire?
Live Writer.
Writer. Can you use that on Macs or no?
I don't know these days if that's pushed out yet or not, or if you can do it in emulation or something like that. But so I've got one of the iterations here, and actually Microsoft Word actually basically copied some of that stuff from Windows Live Writer, and you can publish straight from Word these days. Although Windows Live Writer sends invalid code, I don't know if Word does that or not. That's a whole other thing. So, I had that issue earlier. Okay, so I'm going to be careful, and I'm going to paste this into Notepad.
Isn't it always better to do that first so that you're...
Typically, for some reason, my Microsoft Word button is there, and I normally don't write in Microsoft Word, but I was trying to come up with a way to save the iterations. So I put all this stuff in, and after a copy-paste, I've got quite a bit of text here. And I need a title, so I've written a title so I'm going to put my title in here. And InboundWriter at this point, it's starting to see that there's something there. When I'm pasting things in, I can hit Start Research button, and Windows Live Writer will start to do its thing and analyze. Where's my automatic research? It's getting confused. Going out of order. So let's say...
Aww.
That's not my dog, it's just a...
Yes.
Right, that's just a random dog on the internet that I have. I've got lots of dogs, but I don't have a bulldog.
The internet, no one knew you were.
Yeah, I do have a Basset Hound video on YouTube that is relatively a decent video. So it comes in and it starts to analyze, and the analysis takes a little bit to get going sometimes. It's not always the fastest thing in the world, but basically this plugin is going out and it's talking to InboundWriter, and it's using their engine to analyze all the text that's kind of being uploaded, assessed, pulled back down with a result. Once you actually get going with it, the service kind of works in real time to show you the results of its analysis as you change it. So as I come in initially, it's going to score what I've done, and this is a 100-point scale. You can think of it kind of like a speedometer, or you can think of it kind of like a letter grade. And depending on what your perspective is on being scored as you write, you can kind of look at this as having an editor built into your WordPress installation. Now, in years past, I used to be an intelligence analyst in the military, and I used to have a very tough editor that would kick my butt every time I wrote something, and it really helped me write better. I kind of needed that because otherwise I'd be, off on a weird tangent and writing too much. But I kind of needed that push. Very difficult to stomach somebody telling you your writing needs to be fixed or that bad or, scrap that whole thing and start over. But this, in a nice kind of way, if you can handle the low scores sometimes, kind of helps guide you towards getting a better score. And it kind of gives you a sense of, does the emperor have any clothes before you go live on the internet with it? And there's a couple of things about the system. So just to kind of highlight what's going on, there's a little tool section here which allows you to pick a couple different things to consider how you want to target this article. So at one level, it's going to take a look at your article and it's going to say, how will this article perform in the realm of Google? Are there other articles that are covering this already or not? Is it a competitive topic? And to a certain extent, if you want to avoid regurgitating something that someone else has written, this can kind of be a guide of, am I going to be writing something that someone else has already had, or is this an original thought or something like that? If you want to try and find an opportunity of, how much, if there's low competition there, this will take a look at how well this article might fit in a low competition setting. And if it's not low competition, then you're not going to score as well. If you want to take kind of a middle-of-the-road strategy, you can do that as well. In addition, or alternatively, they've added a new function that helps take a look at how the article might perform if you run AdSense on your site. Now, AdSense isn't a big part of how I make money. I get a few $100s a year from it, but it's not going to pay the bills anytime soon. But it kind of helps you figure out if what you're writing about is going to pull in ads from advertisers on AdWords that pay well, and if you're writing content that's going to match up what you're writing to an advertiser. It's the concept of, again, helping to target your particular article. It's not going to be for everybody, and I'm not necessarily advocating made for AdSense blog posts, but it's a tool that helps you assess how it's going to perform. So you can put that in or not put that in as you choose. And then one of the last settings is you can kind of pick the target education level of the people that you're hoping will read this particular article. If you're writing about rocket science, odds are you're probably not going to want to write at an elementary school level. unless you're trying to teach elementary school kids about rocket science, maybe. But if you're going to try to figure out the next moonshot, you're going to be talking at a much higher level of writing. Yes.
What if it's just like a typical service industry website, say a plumbing company or
Sure.
a company? What would you suggest for that? Is it high school level or is it?
Typically, it's good. I would typically shoot for all education levels, so that's going to be probably the lowest common denominator. But there's in any occupation or trade or education thing or whatever, you're always going to have some jargon that comes in. So as you're writing about, let's say, plumbing, you're going to have some things that come up that aren't necessarily going to be rated at elementary school or high school or college necessarily. It's just the jargon of the trade. It's just the terminology that people use when they're talking about, I don't know a whole lot about plumbing, but elbow fittings or, copper versus plastic or whatever the case may be, or maybe a specific brand name in that industry too. So you might, I would first put it at all education levels just so that you're not writing at, a post-grad level about plumbing. I'm sure there's people out there that, probably are looking at the flow of bubbles through pipes and things like that and trying to figure out a better way to get things to flow. But if you're, just working to run a small business or something like that, you don't need to talk about bubble flow to help a person get their house, plumbed better. So you can kind of come in and you can pick each of these things. Now, I typically set these once and typically leave them because I don't change my strategy all that often. I sometimes come in and I look for the, am I going into a competitive topic or not? But usually I'm writing about something where I found something that nobody else has found yet, or I haven't found it myself out there, so I assume I'm the first, or working on a tangent, and I just kind of go from there. So at that point, I've got all my settings and my potential score. Right away, InboundWriter gives me some steps to improve my score. So it tells me some things like my document doesn't include the right number of focus terms. And it gives me a quick couple of tips. In general, InboundWriter uses a concept called focus terms. And they kind of have the concept that any given article that you write is probably going to be about at least one thing, maybe two or three things. And I kind of like the concept of they kind of push for three or more because you can go out and you can write 100, 200 words on something. Odds are, if you write 100, 200 words on it, it's probably already been written about before. If you're writing it brief enough for people to understand and concise enough, you're probably not putting original content out there, and you're probably wasting your time a little bit, unless you're just kind of building out the copy and the content for a business site or something like that, which you may need just to fill it in. But if you're writing a blog article, you need to put some meat in there for it to actually pay off. And so they start to take a look at what are your three topics. And if you think back possibly to grammar school or middle school or something like that, you might have seen like the form essay style of you write your title and then you write your paragraph about what you're going to be talking about, and you write about your three next paragraphs, and then each paragraph after that is about three topics. And then you write each of those, and it's kind of a form letter type of thing, but it eventually teaches you how writing is really boring and terrible. But it does kind of get a message across, and it keeps you on message. This is similar, although you don't have to write in that form level type thing like from grammar school. So it just kind of pays attention to what you've written about and helps you see at the end of whatever you write, did you cover everything? Did you cover it thoroughly or not? And so in this case, I've entered a couple focus terms initially, and Scribe comes through and it starts to count how many times I've mentioned those specific words. So as it comes through, it's counting, and it sees that I've mentioned ScribeSEO 7 times. And it sees an SEO plugin and WordCamp benefits. This is an article I wrote last night about the benefits of going to WordCamp, and then it kind of morphed into mentioning that I'm talking about ScribeSEO and InboundWriter at WordCamp, and then a little bit about that. Not going to be a good blog article. I don't recommend reading it. I may or may not publish it. But it's a good example for pushing it through the process. So,
Did it put WordCamp? Is that word?
WordCamp?
Does that maybe lower your score? I'm thinking maybe Word autocorrected it or something.
It's possible.
I find WordCamps to be one of the most.
What?
third line.
And
WordCamps. Yeah.
And the second line. And
Right.
the second line as well.
There we go. And I'm sure WordCamps are going to be a lot more popular. Yep. That's why it's not performing well.
I thought this weekend was going to
Now we know how you really feel about it.
Right. It's
Lately.
these work camps that.
Did I improve your score?
So. No problem. And the resolution's kind of messing with me just a little bit. So it comes through, and I can click on. If these are loading up, actually, it's. Let me switch over here real quick. Because I'm not sure if my resolution's playing with me. Okay. So, fast forward just a little bit, because actually I think I was getting a little bit of bugginess going on after that word paste. I've come through with the article, and I've added a few different things to help spruce up the article. I've added subheaders. So I've got, ultimately when I print the, when I publish this to the site, I'm going to have depending on how I build the site, an H1 or H2 header for the article title. And I've added some H3 subheaders for some of the different topics. And again, this goes to, from my perspective, I learned this in business school when I was, learning how to write business documents and stuff like that. As you kind of build an outline structure for your document, and put in the different headers and things like that, things will format better, and you'll help set up the different topics, and you'll allow people that are trying to scan through something to find what they're looking for a little quicker. Same thing works for Googlebot. So if you're putting things in a number of different headers, it's going to be able to find those items a little bit, find the keywords. It's a way to not keyword stuff, but at the same time, it's a way to get the keywords in where they need to be so that people can find what they're looking for. Googlebot can find it, and that can help push up a score a little bit. But now, as I come through the focus terms, I've pulled in a number more, and I can click on each focus term, and I can see how many times it's mentioned throughout the document. In this case, people showed up as a potential focus term, and for this particular article, it's not really about people. It's about WordCamp, so it's kind of about people, but that would be a tangent. If somebody did a search in Google people and they came to this article, that would be a fail on my part. I don't want people, it's probably a very broad search, and that's not what this article is necessarily about. So I can remove that particular focus term and kind of move on. And as I look at some of the other ones, if I look at InboundWriter itself, and I can scroll down and I can see each time it's highlighted. There is a star rating system that comes into effect. You can see this little rating system here. And what that's quickly showing me as a visual is how popular a particular topic is in Google search. So if I'm writing about popular topics, that might give me a hint of, am I going to knock it out of the park and bring in a lot of people to read about what I'm writing about? Now, WordPress, very popular topic, but it's also a very competitive topic, and it's also kind of a, as we hit 16%, which I think is awesome, it's becoming, like a Coke type thing where, I need to go out and get a Coke, or I need to go out and get a WordPress website or something like that. It might supplant things at some time. So as I use that as a keyword, if I go publish that, I'm not necessarily going to bring people to my site that are doing a Google search on WordPress. It is an additional term, but it's not one of my main ones. Same thing for article, a little too generic potentially. So I can remove those, and you'll notice my score is changing a little bit because it thought it was about an article and it thought it was about people, and it even has the word bit in there, which is not what it's about. So that's basically telling me that I've mentioned those words a few too many times. I may be a little bit repetitive within the article, and I need to take a look at how to refine the article, how to go back and take out some of those words that don't fit, replace them with some alternatives, because from the perspective of the reader, if they're reading the same words over and over and over again, they keep reading WordCamp, they're going to get a little tired and bored with what they're reading. So I can start to improve what I have there. In the section below that, they also show some potentially relevant terms. So as it goes through this particular document, and they find some other words that might be important. WordCamp benefits shows up as one that might be important. And it's got a usage of, it's been used 4 times. That's what usage means there. And I can highlight the document and I can see where that's used. And I can see actually that it's just in my titles. Now, this is actually a bit of a mistake in what I've written here, because if you think about it, when you get a title, I'm not sure why that keeps doing that. Let me unplug my mouse. When you have a title, you kind of need to, after you've told somebody what you're going to say, you kind of have to then say it. So if I say I'm going to have a title that's WordCamp benefits, I kind of need to, in my text, go back and actually say it. And that's one of the mistakes that many bloggers make. They'll go out and title something, this is what I'm writing about, and then they'll never mention that, what they're writing about, anywhere within their blog article. And when Google comes to read that article, they just read the body text, and if the main idea was maybe mentioned in the title, Google will say, what is this about? It's not about that, it's about this weird tangent. And they might even, get desperate and start looking at the file names of an image or something like that. So I can see that I've used it, it's in here, but it's not actually in the body copy. So in this body copy, I've got a first sentence that says, I've discovered many benefits of attending WordCamp over the last few years. I found, I could rephrase that to, I found many WordCamp benefits attending these events over the last few years. That sounds a little weird. So I have to kind of work through what's the best way to phrase it to get my point across, or I might need to consider, maybe I shouldn't use WordCamp benefits as my target, or as my main focus term. And that's one of those things where I could go back and forth, but I can't speak and write it at the same time. So if I were to add that, though, if I were to come in here into the document and put in benefits and take it out, I've discovered many WordCamp benefits, and this is kind of a wonky way of making the demonstration. At this point, you'll notice that the word disappeared down here, and it's likely bounced up. So now it's in my bottom row. These are sorted in order of usage. So now it's moved into a focus term. So I've talked about it enough that InboundWriter recognizes it as a potential focus term, and that's kind of a good thing. So
I think 5 visits cut off too, right?
5 visits cut off. So as soon as you hit 5, as soon as you've used it at least 5 times, it shows up there. Now, this isn't a pure SEO tool. So anyone that's seen something like about keyword density might say, well, if you mention a particular word a few too many times, WordPress is used 24 times throughout this document, which is a little heavy. The keyword density on this might be a little out of balance. So from an SEO perspective, that could be a bad thing. There's 2,300 words in here, so it may or may not be. I'm going to now, copying from one Word document, WordPress document to another, so that I can avoid some of those issues. And I'm going to, yeah, it's moved up a little bit now. I'm going to also show you the before and after, because I'm going to move into Scribe just a little bit. And I use these tools kind of back and forth. I use one to try to get the writing up to par for my actual readers. Then I do some tuning in ScribeSEO to make sure that I have readers so that they can actually find the thing. And then I go back and use InboundWriter again to make sure that after I did my SEO work, I didn't make the thing unreadable, which I'm sure many of you have probably seen scenarios where somebody's created some document, probably advertising heavy, and you just can't read the thing because it's only intended to suck you in from Google, and you get there and you're like, this just doesn't make any kind of sense. And actually, not to call out plumbers, but in some of the small businesses out there, a lot of folks will go out and they'll have somebody build a website for them, and they'll use some really generic words and some of the services that they use. And it's partly because they're trying to get placed and they're working in a competitive area, but it becomes kind of unreadable for the people to visit. So this is kind of one of those things where you can go in and you can kind of get one up on your competition because you don't sound like a robot. You sound like a real person explaining something, and that can definitely help. So to make ScribeSEO work, you have to have your SEO fields filled in. So you have to have an SEO title and an SEO description. And once you have that, you can come up here and you can hit an Analyze button in Scribe Content Optimizer. Now, you can think of the Analyze button as kind of like a cell phone minute. With Scribe, you're paying for a service, and so the payment part starts to come in here just a little bit. So when if you think of like a prepaid cell phone service, you go out and you get 500 or 1,000 minutes or something like that. With Scribe, they have several different packages, and you can get an evaluation. It's not a minute, but every time you hit this Analyze button, you're burning an evaluation, or you're counting down until you're empty for the month, and then it refreshes month after month.
How many do you get a month?
It depends on the plan that you pick up. So I'm going to hit the Analyze button, and it's going to do its thing. I believe I'm still connected.
Get down for a question.
Sure.
Since nobody really knows Google's algorithm,
Mhm.
to a T, how
Yep.
do we know this is working? This isn't just.
It's a good question. How do you know that it's...
How do you know it's worth the money?
Well, from my perspective, I had to go try it and use it. And I've been using it since February of 2010, since shortly after they launched, or right about the time when they first launched. And from my perspective, over that period of time, it has definitely helped me get some very good results. It's helped me... I started using Scribe first. InboundWriter, as far as I know, just came out a few months ago. I think it was August. I found them at Blog World back in October. But Scribe has done some very good things for me on the SEO front. It's helped me refocus and make sure that I'm bringing the right people to my site for the topics that they're looking for and the topics that I'm writing about. That's helped. It didn't always help my writing, but it did help my writing a bit, because some of the things you have to do to make sure that you perform well in SEO also kind of relates to how well you've written the documents. Things like making sure that you cover the things you're talking about in the body, as opposed to just mentioning it in the title and then talking all the way around it for several paragraphs or something like
I
that.
guess the other part of that question, isn't there a danger that all these posts start sounding the same because it's saying you didn't use this 5 times versus...
Well, it's
part of me's wondering, is it better to write an article that
it's a
doesn't
right.
look like everybody
How much
else's?
how much real intelligence is being applied to what you've written
Right.
about how good it is, and that's definitely a very subjective thing. So they're never going to get it perfect, because it's still a computer simulated model that's trying to figure out writing, and that's something that comes out of your brain and through your fingertips or where have you. So it's never going to be perfect, and but they can start to model some of it with taking a look at writing patterns. How easy is it to read? Are you covering the topics that you think you're covering? Are those topics that people are even interested in? Are those topics that your audience is interested in?
I'm personally getting sick of titles that are 5 ways to do.
Right, yeah.
Everybody's doing that.
And frankly, if I were to publish this would probably be a decent link bait, but it's not necessarily going to be a readable link bait, because I've kind of quickly covered some of the basic steps of how to do well. I've written an exceptionally long document, and I've optimized it and done a number of other things, but it's not completely a good product yet. So as I perform the SEO review of it, Scribe kind of comes in and it takes a look at some of the components. It'll take a look at your title, kind of making sure that you haven't written too many characters in the title. They'll take a look at, are there keywords in there, and are they primary keywords? You can kind of think of this as the similar to the relevant term or something like that in InboundWriter. And it kind of goes through some additional steps with the description. Now, this is the SEO description, and I'm going to come back to that because it's also important for a couple other things with Scribe. And then it takes a look at the actual body copy. And in this particular one, it takes a look and sees that there's 2,300 and some words in there. The keyword density actually works out. It comes in at 5.5%. So even though there's some words that are used quite a bit, I've written enough that it kind of absorbs that a little bit. It takes a look at how many links I've got in there. And they have a...
Excessive, no?
Well, this is a really long document, right? So this is like half of an essay or something like that. So their recommendation is that you should have about a hyperlink, a source, one source for every 120 words or so. I kind of look at that from a slightly different perspective these days, and I kind of look at it as how much love am I giving out to other bloggers or other people that have talked about some of those topics. And even though this is an SEO tool, I kind of find these days that the more I link to other sources, other people that have covered the topic, the more it helps me in an SEO sense. And it also kind of gives people a way to dive into other tangents and things like that. So it's a good reminder that I haven't done enough to cite my article or whatever I've done. Now, there's lots of different ways to just go throw in links and things like that too. But it does help if you see that. And if you look at this as kind of a checklist of, have you really covered all your bases, this starts to show that checklist. And actually, they have an online, a web version of this that's not a part of the plugin, that you can run any document through the service, and it'll spit out a report, and you can send that on to a manager or something like that. So if you were hiring or managing a number of writers, you could have them take all of their articles, run it through the reporting system, see what the score is, and you might make this one of the requirements. So if, let's say you've got bloggers that are guest blogging for you, or maybe you're even paying bloggers to write for you or something like that, you can make one of the requirements, we'll pay you $20 an article, we'll pay you $25 if you score 90% or better with ScribeSEO, just to make sure that you're getting your value out of what you're paying for. And it's kind of one of those things that helps keep them in. It's not going to make certain that you get a good quality document every time, but it's going to take you a lot further away from absolute gibberish and garbage and SEO nonsense, right? So it moves you along, and that's one of the reasons too why I use both of them together, because the two balance each other out a little bit. One's a little SEO heavy, the other's a little bit more. It's moving on the copywriting side, I guess, is one way to look at it, although it's more of a writing than copywriting. So there are a number of tabs at the top of this. Now, ScribeSEO is less interactive than InboundWriter. It's been around for a while in this particular state. This is version 3. Through the grapevine, I hear that they're working on version 4, and that'll be coming out sometime imminently, but I haven't seen it. I don't work for them. I don't have a preview to it or anything like that. But this one's getting a little old and long in the tooth, and I'm sure there's going to be something more coming soon. But again, it kind of takes a look at the keyword analysis, and it takes a look at some of those words. And I can see here, and this is kind of a better guide for me in this particular case than InboundWriter was, because I can see that they see some of the main topics to be words like benefits and WordPress and Google and perspective. Those aren't real close targets to what I was really trying to write about. And this actually might be an indicator that I've written too many words on a topic that's kind of gone too far away from what I was originally talking about. If I were to redo this document, I'd probably cut it in half, have 2 different blog posts on 2 different topics, one about the benefits of WordCamps, which makes sense, and another one about InboundWriter and ScribeSEO, which would also make sense. Putting the 2 together doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And Scribe also takes a look at where you place the keywords. So they take a look at, are your keywords going at the beginning of your document? Are they going in the initial sentences? Are they going at the beginning of your title? So a little bit more of the hardcore SEO type things. And it takes a look at offers up some advice on some other potential keywords that may or may not fit. They don't tell you how to rewrite it, but they say these may be some other words that you might want to consider. If you do want to try that, what you have to do is you have to go back and rewrite it, rerun Scribe again, and then see if you've done enough to move the needle and push it higher up as an actual primary keyword, which kind of tells you, did you get in the right ballpark for what you originally intended.
Does each pass consume
Each pass consumes an evaluation. And at a high level, there's a monthly service that goes with this. An evaluation at most of the plans boils down to about 30 cents a button push at the most. And there's plans that can take you down to 10 or 17 cents a button push. If you've ever hired an SEO person and asked them to analyze a page, odds are $5 was probably the cheapest you saw, and $2,000 to $3,000 might have been the more expensive that you saw to start to optimize it. So this is do-it-yourself SEO, guided by people that were SEO people, and they found a way to automate it. This is a copy blogger service, but it's run by a fellow named Sean Jackson, who's worked in SEO for a number of years, and they kind of collaborated to build this under the copy blogger media empire, or what have you. So, yes.
So you're basically saying you just have to kind of go in and guess and change the text and run it back through. It's different than the other one.
Exactly. This is a little less interactive. So you have to guess, or you have to start to read it. Now, what I found with this particular tool in the early days, and working with a number of clients that have used it since as well, is the first time you use it, you have to hit that analyze button on your first post or page 4 or 5 times until you eventually go back and forth and zero in and get something that scores decent. And in the early days, if you score an 80-some%, that's pretty good for using this tool. The next time you use it, you probably have to do it 3 or 4 times. And then eventually you'll get to a point, and it usually only takes 5 to 10 blog articles, where you can get a pretty good blog article within 2 to 3 tries. Sometimes you'll get it right away, because you start to eventually you start to internalize all the things that you're supposed to do. And if you've worked with SEO at all, this isn't any revelation on what you need to do. These are things that you can find in a lot of different places, recommendations on best practices, and this is something that changes as well. But as you're writing, as you're living it, you do tend to forget some stuff every now and then, or you fall in love with a title that's too long and will never fit in Google, or things come up and life kind of happens, or you get busy or tired and you just want to get the dumb thing published and done and move on to the next thing. So this kind of helps you see what you've done, and maybe you don't polish it up the first time, maybe you circle back a month or two later and optimize it. And actually, as far as best practices go, with Scribe, for a couple of years now, I've been recommending to clients, go through and hit analyze on your existing blog posts. Go through Google Analytics and identify your top 25 blog articles that are performing the best in Google Analytics, and the ones that are bringing in traffic. So look at which ones are landing people to your site, and then run Scribe on those articles. And basically turn your good hitters into home run hitters. Juice them up, put them on steroids, make sure that you really did have all your bases covered. And I've seen some very good results from my clients doing that. You might have an SEO person, they might knock it out of the park and get you some great results, but if they missed a couple little things, there were a lot of other results that you might have left on the table. After that, then go through, after the plugin starts to pay for itself because you're doing better business, or you're bringing in more traffic, or whatever it is that you use to pay the bills. And I kind of look at this these days, partly from the artistic perspective, but I've been, thanks to Matt, I've been employed using WordPress now since 2006. Thank you again. And so, from my perspective, you start to live it a little bit. So it's great to have a bit of an artistic lifestyle, or write for the sake of writing, or what have you. But at some day you got to put food on the table and pay for bills and things of that nature. So if you're going to do it, you might as well do it right all the way around. If you can't afford to have an SEO person do the SEO stuff for you, this is a way to start to get there. And I do want to point out one little tip in this, loading this in. One of the tabs is called SERP, SERP. And it's a real basic thing, but it kind of gives you a highlight of what your SERP might look like once you publish in Google. Now, this isn't what it will look like. Google is at their liberty to display whatever it is that they're going to put there. But this pulls in your SEO title and your SEO description, and displays it kind of like it would be in Google. That's kind of important because this is your sales pitch. This is your elevator pitch. This is the thing that you could be number one in a Google SERP, but if this doesn't actually convey what your article is about and convince people to click on that and come see you, then you've kind of failed. You just missed the opportunity. You went all the way to the top of the mountain and then turned around before you hit the top and came back down. So this kind of helps you start to evaluate it, and this is kind of where the copywriting part of it comes in to describe a little bit. Will this get the message across? Will this be enough to convey what this thing is about and bring people to your site? And if you've scored well, Scribe's already looked at this and said, this title, this description matches or doesn't match based on the score to everything else that you've written. So if you do bring people in on this, they're going to be happy because they're going to find what they were looking for based on how they were sold in the first place. They're not going to be surprised and find something that's completely off topic. So that's definitely a positive. So that then presents a score. There's a couple other services or tools that Scribe throws in there as well. It also allows you to do some keyword research if you want to. The initial concept with this was to do keyword research before you start writing. I've never used that part of their service, and frankly, InboundWriter has done a little bit better job just throwing it in automatically. But there is kind of a useful thing that they have in the link building side of things. You can come out and you can do a little bit of research. So let's say you've written the article, but you don't have enough links. And you can take a look at some of the primary keywords, and you can take a look and see, are there people out on the web that have written about these particular topics? Or have you internally written about it? Or have people been tweeting about it? So now in this case, I've got my initial primary keyword is not the keyword that I would want to go live with. It's the word benefits, way too generic. But if I could get WordCamp benefits in there, so I'd have to go back and do some rewriting. and get WordCamp benefits in there, then I could add this particular keyword.
But why is it picking benefits?
Well, as it reads my document, it sees the word benefits a lot in some of the key areas of the document, at the beginning of the document. And it's not lumping it together with WordCamp, because I didn't put that in the body text enough. So as I might hope to look through the web and find people that have written about WordCamp benefits, things that they got out of WordCamp or why you should go to WordCamp or something like that, I could potentially do a search. But at this point I could hit, if benefits was the topic that I was looking for, I could then kind of come through here and I can find a lot of different blog articles talking about these things. Now these are benefits, so God knows, Friends with Benefits I think is going to be a popular one. So it's one of those things that help you get the links, and then you can copy those links and you can put them into your document and reference, or go read them and figure out if there's something that you might want to quote or what have you to put them in there. You can also look, it'll internally look at your own site if you've covered it before. Maybe you want to deep link into one of your old articles, or maybe you've got an article that was you wrote the Bible on one particular topic and you want to reference it, you just can't remember the hyperlink, and so this can quick get you there, and you can kind of build out from that point.
But you can't put in what search term you want to use for that.
Not with Scribe. So Scribe is more the objective.
Right.
That's what you wrote. This is what it's
Right,
about.
yeah,
If that's not what you want it to be about, then you need to go back and edit.
Exactly.
So that's kind of the kick in the pants to say, if you publish it now, you've kind of wasted your time a little bit. InboundWriter is a little bit better at guiding you in that process.
But then if you put WordCamp benefits too much throughout, it can sound like...
Exactly. So you don't want to just go... You just don't want to throw the words in there, right?
Yeah.
And because that would be bad as well. So you have to... With Scribe, you have to apply some logic. You have to override the things that will just, trip out the SEO meter, which would devalue the benefits that you're getting. And I suspect in some of the future versions that they're going to build, they'll probably do a little bit of that for you and guide you a little bit more like InboundWriter does. So let me circle back, because I'd mentioned pricing. I'm not trying to sell this to anybody. I do have affiliate links on my site. Don't go there and get it. Go get it your own way. But I do want to point out one thing about the pricing on Scribe. Scribe, this is their standard pricing that they show on the site, but they offer some very steep discounts, lots of promo codes, promo code location. In particular, if you happen to be if you have StudioPress, if you've got a legitimate license to StudioPress, not some copy you found somewhere, you're eligible for a promo code, and that will provide, I believe it's either the professional or the advanced version at the starter or the publisher rate. So you get a whole lot of evaluation. So at a starter level, which in my mind, one of these two accounts is probably the account that you might want to start out to try it with if you were to try it. Because you do need a handful of tries before you, one, learn how to use it, and two, see the benefits. I even purchase this for my clients these days. I use my own money when they don't quite get it, and I'll set them up with an account, load the plugin for them, and guide them through how to use it, some of the training video, and let them go to town for a few months, paying for it out of my own pocket. Because from my perspective as on the development side, if I build somebody a website and they don't know how to write a blog article, or they don't know how to update their pages and get good results, then I kind of failed. I've given them something that looks good, but they're not going to get any results out of it. And so I'm not really helping them. There was a time a few years back where all you had to do was light up WordPress and you were going to rank and you were going to get business. But thanks to the 16%ers of us out there, you can't do that anymore, because somebody's going to eat your lunch by just providing better content. So this is a kind of a way to do that. Now, I mentioned earlier, InboundWriter works on a freemium process. You can actually, it will analyze up to 8 documents a month for you, unlimited number of evaluations or analysis, real-time analysis while you're doing it. After that, if you want more for $19.95 a month, it'll evaluate all of them, and that's on any site that you have. So both of these are global, so you could sign up for the service and use the plugins on as many sites as you have through your login ID and things like that. So they're both very, very useful tools, and I use them like crazy. I've seen some staggering results for some of my clients using Scribe. I haven't rolled out InboundWriter to my clients yet, but I'm going to starting this month. I've kind of been testing it the last few months since I found it, and it's definitely making a whole lot of progress. I can actually show you what the web version looks like. Now, as far as user interfaces go, there's a limited amount of real estate in the widget area for WordPress. InboundWriter's actually got a pretty slick interface themselves. So, depending on where you want to work, you could potentially come over here. And this is some of the same information, just spread out a little bit more. So, some of those initial things that I used to set it up, the targeting the reader, advertising strategy, search and social, those options show up over there. And I believe they're hinting at some of their... they've got a couple things that they're going to be working on next. Optimizing an article for social media. Are people talking about it on Twitter? Are people talking about it on Facebook?
Only keeping the titles down to 140.
Right, and it could just be topics too. Is the particular topic, is it getting a hashtag? I'm not sure how they're going to do it, but I could conceive of a few ways that it could be useful.
Is the website covered by the same subscription?
Yeah, once you've got the subscription, you've got access to the web or through the plugin, and both, I believe, cover plugins for other services as well. I know ScribeSEO does for Drupal and Joomla and I think a couple others. InboundWriter may or may not. I'm not 100% certain about that. ScribeSEO similarly has I want to show the report side there if I can remember.
How close do you come to being efficient?
Sure.
In other words, you write so much now that do these things really help you that much if you get a lot of experience?
It does. On the Scribe side, it's one of those things where I'm always covering my bases. I've done SEO work before and had quite a bit of experience with it, but you forget things. You don't always hit every base. Even if you've got a checklist, you may not always be objective about reading what you just wrote. And so it does help to have that objective look over the shoulder. So, for example, one of the things that I really like about this particular, about Scribe, and I talked to the InboundWriter guys, I told them they need to benchmark off of this, is it's a real simple thing down here at the bottom. It's content optimization report. You generate a report, and it creates a Word document, and you basically get all those things that were in the tabs in a Word doc. Now, this isn't the thing that you're going to turn to as you're trying to optimize the article. And by the way, this has the full HTML version of the article, so if you ever need a backup of an article, this is an alternate way to do that. But as you come in here and you get the information on the score, if you're managing a lot of writers, or even a few writers, or maybe you're running a business and you've got a couple of bloggers that work for you or something like that, you could potentially have them go write the article and send you the report. And this is like a dashboard, the thing that you turn to see if they've covered their bases and done a decent job. Because having written a whole lot, there's times when, it's just not in you that day. Mm-hmm. And you can write all day and you can even give it your best and it won't happen. And there's times when you're completely distracted. In my case, duck flies through the office, knocks my laptop off, and kids are yelling in the background, dogs are barking. Things happen. So that's one of those things. But the report kind of shows you, you got your bases covered. And maybe, if you're running a company, you could come in and try to make sure that the things that were important are there, and you could use them. There's the HTML copy of everything that was in there. Similarly, another cool WordPress aspect of this, if I go to all posts, and I'm going to leave this page and lose my work, that's okay, because I think we're almost
out.
out.
Also plugin, like InboundWriter.
They're both services that you can sign up for, and then you install a plugin into WordPress, and you get the service right into WordPress.
Quick downside of this, right now, the InboundWriter, if you use their online service, you can't take away HTML.
That's true.
So
Scribe's a little more developed that way.
You lose your links.
InboundWriter doesn't look at links. So from an SEO perspective, Scribe looks at some of the things that you've linked to, like keywords and links. They also look at headers and how you use headers or bold the strong tags and things like that. So from an SEO perspective, some of the things that you might want to emphasize will show up on Scribe. InboundWriter isn't so much an SEO tool. They don't look at those things yet. They've considered it, but it's not a priority yet, and it may never be. I'm not sure. But both of the tools, when you're looking at all your posts, you can take a look at your overall Scribe optimization scores, and you can see the primary keywords that kind of popped up. InboundWriter has a similar scoring thing. InboundWriter is kind of the tool that I'm still learning to use myself a bit, so my scoring is a little bit more erratic as I use it. It's kind of all over the place. And actually I've got some Google Analytics stuff that pops in here too. With the resolution, I'm a little squeezed, but there's different amount of traffic that are coming in here. So I can actually come in, I can take a look at how much traffic I'm getting on an article, how I scored, what primary keywords I was hitting, what I scored in InboundWriter, and I can start to get a pretty good idea of how much those scores have helped generate some results. For example, I've got let's see, we were talking about it earlier. One of my most popular articles is how to set up PayPal for a nonprofit. And I had worked with a client years back. They needed to set up a PayPal account so they could start accepting donations, and it's an extremely tedious process and a way of doing that in PayPal. It's not straightforward like your typical thing. And so I documented out all of the steps, because even going through PayPal, they don't direct you to the right place. And I've talked to the @nonprofit person at PayPal a couple times, and they've actually made some improvements since I wrote this originally. But it's been a very popular blog article. It's one of those great big long ones, and it's got lots of pictures of step after step after step after step. I scored it well, and I've gotten a lot of traffic off of it, and I've helped close to 300 nonprofits get set up with PayPal since I did this. So I've helped a lot of people get a lot of things done. I've since gone back and I've rescored it with InboundWriter. I've tweaked it in a few places. I've added a video too, because all the images gets to be a little tedious. I wanted to show people the process in a video as opposed to making them read a whole bunch. This is one that I can't see the numbers there, but I'm getting several thousand people a month that come in on this article based off of the scoring. Different clients I've worked with, their traffic has jumped from 60,000 page views a month to 250,000, just by going through and doing that strategy of taking your good hitters, your good performing articles, the things that people liked when they found it, and turning them into home run hitters.
Does that only affect new people who click on the links? Because you're editing something that's already posted.
I don't worry about that so much. I kind of look at, and it's a change in philosophy that I've had, but I've started to take a look at my blog articles like they're a living document a little bit. In the old days, I would have said, you write an article, if you think of a new version of it or a tangent or something like that, go write a new blog article, reference the old one, and then you got two things out there. These days, I kind of look at that as it's kind of spammy. Spammy may be the wrong word, but you're cluttering up the internet instead of going back and perfecting the thing that you first did, or updating, like the PayPal thing. The steps have actually changed from the way I wrote the article originally. I've gone back and I've updated the text and the video. I need to actually go update the images. I haven't done the images yet, but I'm doing that right in this particular article. One, because it's performing well. That's where people know it and they're citing it and things like that. And it just needs to kind of live and move on. And I don't need that many more blog posts out there. I've written over 10,000 blog posts over the years, and frankly, I don't need to write another 10,000 in the next year or two.
Do you change your publish date when you press?
Yeah, that's, I guess, yeah.
I don't. So
I don't know if it might be dated info, you know?
I do write if I usually put something that says updated in there, and I change the date within the article. I don't change the publish date. I've been looking at, should I refresh it? Should I bounce it to the top of my blog again and rotate it back through, or do a best of? And I haven't really found the right solution for that. There's a couple different plugins that do that type of thing, and I just haven't found the right thing that fits yet. There's probably a way to do it. I just haven't found the thing that I like.
Which one of those would you do first? If we're just going to try to learn more.
Since you have to pay for these, Scribe is the one that I started with, and it's the one for me that pretty much paid for itself within about a month and a half to 2 months. And that was back when SEO benefits took a little longer. It's happening faster these days. So I'm a former accountant and like to see the percentage movement. So when you pay a little bit of money, I like to see the return pay for itself as fast as possible so that I can keep doing whatever it is I'm doing. And from my experience, Scribe will pay for itself relatively quickly. And you can use InboundWriter for free, up to 8 documents a month, which is a good place to start too. If you need more than that with InboundWriter, then you can kind of make the call if you're seeing the benefit. I haven't found a good way to track whether or not InboundWriter is paying for itself. They've actually put together some case studies, and they've got some presentations that you can check out if you're interested that show that if you write a good article, it'll get good SEO results. Kind of makes sense. There's a lot to it, but I suspect there's probably some situations where if you write a really good article but screw up a couple of SEO things, you'll not get good results too. So they don't cover all those bases, but they cover quite a few. So Google's getting smarter too all the time. So eventually Google might be able to, overlook the lack of covering an SEO step here or there, and because I don't think Google really wants to be in the SEO business that way. They'd rather just find the right answer for people. So. Sure.
So if you have people who are blogging for you, and you want them to kind of run the tool themselves first, so you don't have to do all of that, do they have to go into the admin panel of your site, or can they do it through the web-based thing and it's easier? Because some people, if they haven't worked in WordPress,
You could do it in either location.
And if you do it in the web version, you're not going into the admin. You're not having to do
You're not sending them into WordPress.
Where to go
right. It's more a question of what's the right work culture for the writers that you have.
Right.
And where are they going to be comfortable? Where are you going to get the most out of them and enable them to do what you need them to do?
If you're using the web interface, how do you get the content from the web to WordPress?
Yeah.
With Scribe, it's a copy-paste. With InboundWriter, since they don't always do the hyperlinks, the copy-paste is there, but it'll strip it out. So you have to figure out whether or not, how much you're going to mark up the text with, a different header or a hyperlink or, a strong tag or something like that. And that's a workflow type thing. That's something, they're still technically in beta, and they've been around since August, I think it was.
If you're doing it in LiveWriter or maybe if you're doing it in an HTML environment or something, you could copy it out to the web. You could. So, like I mentioned at the beginning, I do a lot of things, and probably about half my articles start off in LiveWriter, which has a rich text editor, essentially, and an HTML editor, and it publishes it in draft mode or live mode up to my WordPress site. So I start there and push it up, and then start to analyze it once I've gotten my rough draft going at whatever point I'm ready. There's some things that I'll need to do once I'm on the site. If I'm, embedding an image that's already on my site or doing something else that's already up there, just kind of depends. One thing that Windows LiveWriter doesn't do is it doesn't have a featured image option. So these days I always put a featured image on everything. So I have to write it first, upload it, then upload a featured image. I wish LiveWriter had the ability to send the featured image up into WordPress and save me that particular step, or I don't know, maybe someday Microsoft can spin off Windows LiveWriter and Automatic can pick it up. But in this environment, in the third-party writer environment, if they were writing LiveWriter, they could easily use the web analyzer, but keep the structure that they built in LiveWriter to put in WordPress.
Yep.
Without losing that.
There's everybody's going to be a little different in their workflow steps and what works for them or who's all involved, and you're going to have to kind of make that choice. I'm still learning which way I'm going to use these tools together myself. There could come a point in time too where I drop one and just go with one or the other, because I'm paying a little bit of money every month. For me, it's not expensive because I've seen the benefits. It pays for itself from my perspective. But if I can cut costs, I'll do that every time. I won't keep a tool that's not working for me anymore.
And like with either one, I guess Inbound is different, but like with Scribe, because you have to kind of tweak it yourself and go back. Say if you have a writer working for you, can you have them save like the before and after version so that if you want to...
You could have them, if they're working on the web version, you could have them generate a report for each one.
I see.
So that could be one way. And you could see the different scores, and you could see if, maybe if they might score an 85 on one and a 95 on another, and you might realize, well, the 95 is a better score, but the 85 was a better article.
Reads better, yeah.
Or vice versa. In my experience, it usually goes the other way with Scribe. It's a little more manual with Scribe, but the higher the score is actually a pretty good target for what's a pretty good article.
Okay.
It's fine.
Okay. Well, thank you, everybody. Hope you're getting a lot out of WordCamp, and